You who have waited faithfully for the punchline of this speech, that having consulted colleagues and in view of the circumstances in Parliament, I have concluded that person cannot be me.
Just over a year ago, that statement made by British lawmaker Boris Johnson stunned many in the UK. After all, this was a man who'd campaigned so hard for Brexit that more than a year on, his promises are still making headlines. So when Britain made the surprising decision to agree with Johnson last year, his star seemed destined to rise to the very top. But it fell a little short until some say maybe now. Because as the UK's Foreign Secretary tends to business at the United Nations, back home one hushed question is echoing around the ancient halls of British power. Could this once rising star be about to eclipse Theresa May herself? Not according to the Prime Minister, at least. Just minutes ago, she insisted her government is being, quote, driven from the front. Nic Robertson is following the developments. He joins us now from London. And Nick, Boris Johnson is being accused of backseat driving when it comes to these Brexit discussions. Some say he's going outside the scope of his own role and again making some pretty outlandish and misleading claims.
Sure. The Home Secretary Amber Rudd over the weekend in reference to a 4,300-word article that Boris Johnson wrote for a leading British conservative-leaning newspaper over the weekend, Saturday, essentially accused him on the Sunday talk shows here of backseat driving, of trying to sort of push the Prime Minister into a certain position over the issue of Brexit. I mean, I think you have to look broadly at many things here, as you always do in politics, but Theresa May is due on Friday this week to give a keynote speech in Florence, Italy, about her view on Brexit. There is, of course, the party conference coming up in just a couple of weeks' time, where the question of leadership of the party has been something that was expected, you know, perhaps a few months ago, expected to take more of a centre position. Now, perhaps not so much. Theresa May's been looking more stable. But what Boris Johnson has done here with this long article is to outline a sort of a hard Brexit position. He doesn't talk about a period of transition at the end of negotiations, which is something that leaders of business and industry in Britain and the Prime Minister seems to be heading towards, and the Chancellor of the Exchequer are heading towards. So he's trying to, it appears to some as if he's sort of trying to corral the Prime Minister away from a sort of a softer, slower Brexit into something harder and abrupt. And that's perhaps why he's been accused of this backseat driving. But it's noticeable today that some of the other harder line of Brexit leading politicians, Michael Gove, who was the one that led Boris Johnson to give that speech that you saw him giving there just over a year ago, because he took away his support for Boris Johnson in leadership for the party, has come out in support of Boris Johnson's, 4,300-word article, as have some of the Conservative MPs. So this is a lot about internal politics, and this certainly does, put the Prime Minister off her stride a little bit. Is Boris Johnson really coming back to being a rising star? I think that's a very unanswered question at the moment, and certainly the bookmakers in Britain have got him as the most likely cabinet member to lose their job, in the next cabinet minister to lose their job.
Yeah, not a great position to be in. Certainly a lot of anger, many people within his own party calling for him to be sacked. You mentioned that Amber Rudd sound. I think we have that for our viewers. Let's just let them listen to it.
I don't want him managing the Brexit process. What we've got is Theresa May managing that process. She's driving the car, to continue the allegory, and I'm going to make sure that, as far as I'm concerned and the rest of the cabinet are concerned, we help her do that. This is a difficult moment.
So this is backseat driving, in effect?
Yeah, you could call it backseat driving, absolutely.
British Home Secretary there. Nick, does Boris Johnson realise that he's alienating himself within his own party?
The tone of that article, it was very sort of hard when you read it to try to figure out where precisely that he was trying to go with this. We know he's had aspirations for the leadership. He is the Foreign Secretary, and Brexit is the most important foreign policy issue, foreign negotiation that Britain is involved in at the moment. So, that he wouldn't speak about it is perhaps a surprise to some people outside of Britain, but essentially because there's a Brexit minister and an international trade secretary as well, that Boris Johnson feels he hasn't been allowed to say what he believes. So, yes, you could look at this as him pushing himself towards that leadership position, but unless he gets the political balance right, and I was with him just 3 weeks ago in Nigeria when he swore that he still supports the Prime Minister. I was standing there next to him as a colleague asked him that question, and he said, no, absolutely, I support the Prime Minister. This makes it look something different to that, and that's the trouble people are having with it.
Yeah, a lot of people always wondering whether you can trust politicians for that very reason. Nic Robertson, good to have you with us as always. Thank you very much. Well, still to come here on Connect the World, stars of the small screen descending on Hollywood on Sunday night for the 69th Annual Emmy Awards. And this year's show did not disappoint, serving up a few surprises. We'll have the latest with a live report when we come back.